Okay, for the English speakers, we are going to uh, look at the review for the upcoming Mishnah test. We're focusing on this review sheet that was handed out and sent to your email. So the Mishnah begins with a few laws in Mishnah Aleph. Mutar lechazan likro et Megila ben me'omad ben me'ushav. A chazan is permitted to read the Megillah on Purim either by standing or by sitting down. He can read it in either position. He can read it starting standing, then sitting, and vice versa. Either position is okay. Then mutar lishnei anashim likro et Megillah bebat echat, meaning that two people can read the Megillah at the same time, at the same moment. So you might think that being that two people are saying the Megillah at the same time, you can't concentrate and you won't be able to focus. So afal pi sheyesh shnei kolot, even though there are two voices being heard, biglal she'amitzvah chaviva alehem, since the mitzvah is very dear to the people, yitnu datam lakshiv likriyata, they're going to focus, they're going to concentrate, and they're going to hear one voice, or the voice that they actually want to hear, and they'll fulfill the mitzvah, even though two people are reading at the same time. So it's allowed for two people to read the Megillah at the same time. Im yesh minhag b'makom levarech, az yevarech. If the minhag of the city is to say a bracha, then we say a bracha. Im lo, if the minhag of the city is not to say a bracha, az lo yevarech, so we do not say a bracha. The question is, what bracha are we talking about? So the Mishnah medaberet al habrachot acharei hamegillah. Mishnah is talking about the brachot that follow the Megillah, that come after the Megillah. Meaning there, on the brachas that come after the Megillah, there's a different differentiation in terms of customs amongst the cities. Some cities do say brachot after the Megillah. Others don't say brachot after the Megillah. So therefore, it all depends on the custom of the city you are in. If you are in a city that says the bracha after the Megillah, then you say the bracha with them. Even you may not have that same custom, but you say the bracha after the Megillah with them. However, if you are in a city that does not have the custom to say the bracha of the Megillah, so you do not say the bracha of the Megillah, even though you may yes have a custom. Aval kulam maskimim shechayav levarech al habrachot lifnei Megillah. Everybody agrees that you must say a bracha before the Megillah. Lifnei, that's the key word here, is lifnei. So before the Megillah, everyone agrees that you must say the bracha. The only question is acharei ha-Megillah, where it all depends on custom. Bayom Sheni, Bayom Chamishi, B'Shabbat Mincha, on Monday, Thursdays, and on Shabbat afternoons Mincha, Yesh Gimel Aliyot LaTorah, there are three aliyahs to the Torah. We call up three people. Lo Pachot Velo Yoter, not less and not more. Only three. What is the reason? So Bimei Sheni v'Chamishi, on Mondays and Thursdays, Biglal Hem Yemei Melacha, being that they are days of work, as Yevatel Ha'am Bilavod, if we call up more than three people to the Torah, then basically we are preventing people from going to work. We're taking away from their work time, their parnasah. They won't be able to make as much money. So we don't want that to happen. So we limit it to three. Now, so what's the reason for Shabbat Mincha? You cannot say the reason is because work, because nobody works on Shabbat. So what's the reason why we limit it to three? Biglal Keriyat Sefer HaTorah hi samuch lishki'ah. The reading of the Torah is always close to sunset. As lo mosifim aliyah, we don't add more aliyahs because we don't want to read the Torah past sunset. It's asur to read the Torah past sunset, so we want to finish before sunset, and therefore we keep it at three. En haftara beyom sheni beyom chamishu b'Shabbat mincha, and as well we do not say a haftara on Monday, Thursday, and Shabbat mincha. Oto tam sheisparnu, the same reason that we just gave. On Monday and Thursday it's because of work, and on Shabbat because of being close to sunset. בזמן המשנה המנהג היה שהראשון מברך לפניה אשר בחר בנו והאחרון מברך לאחריה אשר נתן לנו. האמצעים לא מברכים כלל. Okay, so this requires a little bit of explanation. In the time of the Mishnah, they had a different custom than what we do have now. In time of Mishnah, let's say there were three guys that went up to the Torah, let's say on a Monday. So the first guy would say, he would go up to the Torah and he would say Asher Bachar Banu. He would say the first bracha. When he finished reading the Torah, that first person, he wouldn't say Asher Natan Lanu like we have the custom to today. He would just sit down. Then the second guy would go up. He's called the Emsa'i, the people in the middle, and he wouldn't even say any bracha, not even Asher Bachar Banu. He doesn't say anything. But the last guy, when he goes up, he doesn't say Asher Bachar Banu, but he ends off with Asher Natan Lanu. So the first guy says Asher Bachar Banu, everybody in the middle says nothing, and the last guy says Asher Natan Lanu. So now, that was the custom in the time of the Mishnah. But when the rabbis in the Talmud came along, they said, whoa, we have a problem here. What's going to happen? Let's say somebody comes in late. Someone's going to come to Bet Knesset late. He's going to come in the third aliyah. And he's going to see a guy walk up to the Torah and not say any bracha. And he's going to assume that whenever we read from the Torah, there's no brachas. So therefore, to avoid this assumption from the people, obviously we're talking about Amei Haaretz, people that don't know the laws. To avoid this assumption, the rabbis made a takana, a decree, that everybody that goes up to the Torah must read Asher Bachar Banu, and when they're finished, they must read Asher Natan Lanu, which is the custom that we have today. Every person that goes up to the Torah reads Asher Bachar Banu and Asher Natan Lanu. That's the end of Mishnah Aleph. Mishnah Bet. Mishnah Bet a little more simpler. Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed have Daled Aliyot to the Torah. 4 people go up to the Torah on Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed. En pochatin ben mosifin. You're not allowed to have more than 4, you can't have less. There's also no haftara, en haftara on Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed. The rule is, kol sheyesh bo musaf eno yom tov. Any day that has musaf, like Rosh Chodesh has musaf and Chol HaMoed has musaf, but it's not a yom tov, meaning we're not prohibited from work. Dalet aliyot la Torah, there are 4 aliyot to the Torah. Yom Tov, however, for example, Pesach, Sukkot, the holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Hey aliyot la Torah, there are 5 aliyot, there are 5 people called up to the Torah. Yom Kippur, a little bit more holy, is Vav aliyot la Torah, there are 6 aliyot to the Torah on Yom Kippur. And Shabbat, being the day that is most holy, is 7 aliyot la Torah. Now, for these 3 days, Yom Tov, Yom Kippur, and Shabbat, the rule is as follows. En pochatim mispar haliyot. You cannot do less than the given amount. So you cannot do less than 5 on Yom Tov, less than 6 on Yom Kippur, less than 7 on Shabbat. Aval im rotzim mutar lehosif. But if the people of the shul want to add on more aliyot, they are allowed to add on aliyot. And that's why on Shabbat sometimes we see many people go up much more than 7 if there's a simcha or something. So you're allowed to add on Shabbat. And of course on Shabbat, Yom Kippur, and Yom Tov, there is a haftarah to be said. There's a maftir. Mishnah Gimel talks about which things are not allowed to be done without a minyan, without 10 people. So we listed 10 things in the Mishnah. The first is called the Fros al Shema, which means the saying of Kaddish and Baruch and the brachas of Kriyat Shema can only be done when you have 10 people. The second thing is called Ovrim Lifnei HaTeva. That's referring to Shaliach Tzibur, the Chazan. So the official service of a chazan to say Shmona Esrei needs to be done with 10 people. And we don't have if there's not 10 people, there's no chazan. Number 3, Nosin et Kapehen. This is referring to the Birkat Kohanim, where the Kohanim go up and bless the Kahal. Number 4, Likro Batorah. Pretty straightforward. Reading from the Torah. You cannot read from the Torah if there's not 10 people. Then we have Maftirin Ben Avi, which is the Haftarah. We cannot read from the Haftarah. We cannot read a Haftarah without 10 people. Ma'amad u'moshav. This is a little bit more confusing. Basically, after someone passed away, they would carry the dead person on the way to his burial, wherever he was going to be buried. And then as they were walking, they would sit 7 times. They would sit down and start crying. And then the people around them would tell them to get up. They would say a specific pasuk. They would tell them to get up, and then they would sit again and start crying. This happened 7 times. This was called Ma'amad u'moshav. Ma'amad, standing up, Moshav, sitting down. They would do it 7 times, and this whole event, so to speak, can only take place if there are 10 people around. It was a custom that used to be done, and you had to have 10 people. Birkat Avelim. Birkat Avelim is a bracha that was said to the mourners after the Levaya. Acharei HaLevaya, this was said. Tanchumei Avelim were the words of comfort that were said after the burial to the mourners. Also, we needed 10 people. Birkat Chatanim, which we know today as Sheva Brachot, 7 brachot that are said for Chatan and Kala, for a newlywed bride and groom. We say you need 10 people. That's what the Mishnah says. And finally, mezamenin. Mezamenin refers to zimun, the before Birkat Hamazon, im Shem Hashem. So, for example, there's two types of zimun. There's zimun with 3 or more people, 3 to 10. We say nevarech she'achalnu mishelo. But if you have 10 people, you say nevarech Elohenu she'achalnu mishelo. You say Elohenu, which is the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the name of Hashem. So in order to say that, you need to have 10 people. Mishnah Daled. Chayav likro minimum gimel psukim lechol aliyah b'Torah. Anybody that goes up to the Torah, or the person reading for the person going up, has to read a minimum of 3 pesukim. He cannot read less than 3. Lo yikra hameturgeman. Now the meturgeman, who is the person that is translating the Torah into Aramaic, okay. Back then, people didn't understand the lashon of the Chumash, so there was a meturgeman who was paid to translate it for the kahal. He is only allowed to translate 1 pasuk in the Torah at a time. He cannot translate more, not to confuse the people. Only allowed to translate 1 pasuk. However, in Navi, he can translate up to 3 psukim, up to 3. Then the Mishnah says that you are allowed to skip from parsha to parsha in the Navi, but you are not allowed to skip it aval lo b'Torah. You are not allowed to skip it in the Torah. So says the Mishnah asks a question: At kama hu yachol ledalek? How much can he skip? Well, can he skip from the beginning of the book to the end of the book? Remember, back then it wasn't just a book like we have today. The Navi was a scroll. They had to roll it, just like we roll Sefer Torahs. So how much is he allowed to skip? So the Mishnah answers, he's allowed to skip ad kedei shelo yipsak hameturgeman. As long as the meturgeman is still talking and explaining what was previously read, then he can work on rolling the scroll to skip to the next piece. But the moment that the meturgeman stops, that's already too long, because what's going to end up happening is that people are going to get restless, and it's called Torah Tzibur, and they're not going to want to stay, and they're not going to like it that they're waiting too long for you to skip to your next spot. So you can only skip as long as the Meturgeman is still talking. And that's what this line over here says. It's already too much. Mishnah Hey, the fifth and final Mishnah. Bisman Mishnah Misha Omer Haftara Hu Pores et Hashema. It was a custom in the time of the Mishnah that whoever was the one reading the Haftarah, he would be Pores Shema, which we translated as saying Kaddish and Baruch. We said that back up here on Mishnah Gimel, Lifros el Shema, Lagi Kaddish uBaruch. So whoever was going to say the Haftarah that week, he would be the Chazan. And he would say the Kaddish and Baruch, he'd be the Chazan, and if he was a Kohen, he would do Birkat Kohanim as well. Today, that's not the custom. Today, the person reading the Haftarah is not necessarily the Chazan. However, back then, that's what the custom was. Ve'im hamaftir hu katan. Let's say the person who was going to read the Haftarah was a child, was a yeled, a katan. Az ha'ava shelo o harav shelo osed kol advarim sheizkarnu bishvilo. His father or his rabbi would say everything, would do everything that a normal person would do. But because he's a katan, he can't. A katan cannot say kaddish. A child cannot say Baruch Hu, he cannot be Chazan, he cannot do Birkat Kohanim. So in his place, his father would go up and do it for him, and if his father is not around, his rabbi would do it. And that concludes the review for Mishnah Aleph Tehei on Perek Daled Masechet Megila.